Hi, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner.
And our dog, Betty White.
Your hosts of the Arner Adventures podcast.
Could we have named it something more creative? Probably. But it's the name of our blog. It's our last name. We're on an adventure. Yada, yada, yada. After owning our own business, working 24/7.
And don't forget a mental breakdown in between.
We made a lifestyle change and decided to make the most out of life.
We sold our house, most of our belongings, downsized, and moved to the coast.
We live life minimally, but fully.
We live each day as an adventure.
This show will help you learn how to live life more fully, with more intention, by experiencing more, and with less stuff.
We'll talk about our own experiences, interview others who have much to share by creating a spark in our lives.
Some days we'll share real-life ongoings of what we're going through, and others will talk about our favorite flavor of waffle.
Come join our adventure.
It's the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Hello, everybody. I am Shannon. Jerry is on a hiatus this week. We'll get into why. Nothing's wrong, by the way, for all you people who are a little dramatic like me. Nothing's wrong. I am back home with Betty. If you heard the last episode that I was out of town with her, we are back. Our routines are getting back in order, but we are just on some tight schedules lately. And you know what? Instead of pushing it and mandating that certain things happen, we're just trying to have some grace with ourselves and say, hey, you know what? I got this part. You take this part. We're going to maneuver through. So welcome back. This is episode 93 of the Arner Adventures podcast. This episode is, we always say is so great. Of course, when we have guests, we ask them to be on the podcast, and our guest today, Desirae Endres, is no exception. Desirae, I actually found her by I'm always doing different research about morning routines and just ways to, improve quality of life through the morning routines and all of that. And I found her simple morning lists, which we're going to link down in the show notes. But when I saw her website and, what she had done with creating the simple morning list, Jerry and I really relate to her whole story. So we just really wanted to have her on the podcast and talk about being more intentional. And that seems to be a theme lately, but maybe it's just where we are in the season of our life that we're trying to be more intentional and getting back to basics. And so we hope that you enjoy this episode. We know that you will definitely come away with it with some nuggets and key information that we did. And so without further ado, let's get to Desirae Endres. So we want to welcome our guest, Desirae Endres. Desirae is a mom to two, wife, former teacher, host of the Minimalist podcast, and author of Simple Morning Lists, which we're so excited to dive into. After decluttering her whole home and making several life changes, she is passionate about sharing the message of minimalism and intentional living, as this movement has changed her family's life. We totally relate to it. We can't wait to dive into it. Desirae, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So we like to paint a little bit of a picture as far as like where you're coming to us from. So where exactly are you today?
Yeah, I am in Pittsburgh, PA, and you can probably see behind me that I'm in a basement. Literally, I'm in my basement. This is my recording studio in my basement. But yeah, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's really nice weather today. We've been experiencing probably the best Pittsburgh weather that we'll experience all year this week. So yeah.
Okay. That's
nap
nice.
Time for my youngest.
Oh, perfect time.
Where I'm at.
Well, what's nice probably about you having your studio in the basement is that you probably don't have to, we set up, so we have to noise proof every time and all of that, because it's also like a guest room office. So that's nice that you've got a designated space for your podcast room.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's the most soundproof, but we just do our best over here.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I wouldn't have known you're in the basement. It kind of looks like a the subway tile cute kitchen wall from what I'm looking at. So
from afar, it does.
Yeah. Well, we're really excited. My husband and his family are originally from Pennsylvania, kind of outside of Philadelphia. So we have some Pennsylvania ties. So yeah.
Awesome.
Well, okay. So we talked about before we got on here that we found you and we're really excited about your simple morning list. We're definitely going to get into that. We're big believers in morning routines and how it really sets the tone for your whole day. But we're also really excited to talk to you about how it also coincides with you have a minimalist journey and decluttering and intentional living. And I'm always really curious because it just seems like people have this either a switch or there's a major life event or there's something that goes into their mindset where they're like, this is the lifestyle that I need, that's better quality and all of that. So I would love to know if there was a pivotal moment or experience that led you to a minimalist lifestyle and your intentional living journey.
Yeah, there was a pivotal moment that happened, and it's funny because every time I tell it, I'm like, it's not really exciting. I was just sitting at my house and trying to pass time before my husband got home. He is a wrestling coach, so during that season, he's gone for a lot of the day, and I was a new mom at the time too, so I was just really like trying to survive the day and pass the time. And I put on the minimalism documentary. It just kind of caught my eye on
Mm-hmm.
Netflix. This is back in early 2018. And that was the first time I had really heard that word and like figured out what it actually meant and cared, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
to learn what it meant. And it was so opposite of how I was. Like, I loved shopping ever since I ever had a first job, like babysitting in seventh grade. I would spend all my money shopping for clothes at the mall, like right away, as soon as I earned it. And so it was just such a different mindset. And it was also like, even though it wasn't this like exciting moment that happened, it was really the time I needed to hear it and the time I needed to discover it because I was a new mom. I was overwhelmed, as that season of life is overwhelming to transition into parenthood. And more than anything, I wanted to get to stay home with my daughter, and I was teaching, and teaching from the beginning was just like a very stressful job for me. So
Mm-hmm.
becoming a mom, I didn't want to be a mom and a teacher. It just wasn't going to work for me personally. And I didn't know how that was possible. And seeing how different people lived with minimalism, for some reason, it kind of put this glimmer of hope in me that like having the life that I wanted and focusing on the things that mattered most to me was going to be possible. And it went from there, basically.
Okay. What's interesting is that we sort of had like, some emotional stuff that took us down that path, but that same documentary is sort of what also spawned us to be like, that I don't know. It's just like something is I almost think it's either going to click with you or it's not. And
Yeah.
I think it definitely clicked with us and made us realize it's not one of those things that makes you think it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's just sort of, I don't know. It's just something inspiring. And I think almost when that thing does click with you, if you're the person who aligns with that lifestyle, it's almost like, okay, like you just go in, I feel like. Were you someone who immediately started decluttering or was it a transition into it?
Yeah, it's funny because my husband and I are opposites. Like, I'm kind of a messy person and he is neat and tidy. And so it was nice to watch it together because I actually paused it once I started watching it and waited till he got home because I was like, he's
Yeah.
gonna like this. And it's gonna fit with his mindset. And it was nice to have like this common goal, even coming from two different personality types and two different like
Mm.
probably brain types and everything. But we really, I think that day started, we just decluttered our pantry, which is, something that everyone really needs to do, minimalism or not, because
Yeah.
eventually you have to like consume the food and buy the new food. You can't fit everything into the pantry all the time. So we just did that. And then from there, it happened to be right near, we were both teachers at the time, right around our spring break. And we had a week-long spring break. So we really we dove in, and we had I don't know how old my daughter was, maybe like 9 months old or a little bit younger than that even, I think. And we still, we like would take this little baby playpen with us in every room that we were in and just go at it and declutter. And
Wow.
that was just like the first phase, because soon after we decided to move, and then we really decluttered again because we left a lot of things, not left it behind in the house, but donated and
Yeah.
did not bring it with us.
Yeah, and I almost think, like with us too, it was a big transition. But every time we've even moved or just lifestyle changes, I feel like we declutter even more, even more, even more. It's like enough
Yeah.
time goes by and you realize I didn't need that either. I didn't need that either. So it's almost a good thing. And yeah, there are sometimes things that we try to declutter once a quarter, really big decluttering, because things trickle in and you're just like, how did that get here? So for two reasons, it's that. And then you also realize you just don't need things that you felt
Right.
like you did,
Yeah.
So we've had several people on the podcast who we, align with, and we see, oh, they're minimalists, or they live a minimalist lifestyle. And we'll have people on who are like, well, I don't think I'm a minimalist. Just like I thought that they were. And so I think there's a lot of different ways that people define minimalism and, have a philosophy about it. Sometimes people think it's, a way of architecture, and which it is, but the way it's sort of evolved over time. And sometimes it can be sort of a trendy, catchy word, but what would you like in your lifestyle? What do you consider minimalism? Like, how would you define it?
Yeah. It's funny because like sometimes I go back and forth with saying like, I'm not really a minimalist. I just, minimalism is just a tool that I use. And then I had someone on my podcast a while back that said like, minimalism is what you make it. So like she said, I call myself a minimalist, even though you might walk into my house and not think so. So I love that. I love this question because it is true. It's different for everyone. And for me, like I define minimalism as basically a tool that can help you find space for things that matter. And that's kind of like the whole premise and the philosophy of minimalism for me. And while it is about stuff and having less stuff and having a new mindset around stuff, that stuff isn't what brings you happiness. The acquiring stuff is not what is the definition of success, the bigger home, the fancier car, whatever. It's more so about defining your values and defining what matters to you, and then starting to kind of chip away and declutter the things that don't fit there. So whether that is defining your values, defining what matters around physical stuff and material things and going and decluttering your home, or defining your values and defining what matters in your actual life and chipping away at the things that are taking away from that.
Whether you are a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, a business owner, or anyone who handles any kind of marketing, we can't wait to tell you about one of our trusted partners, Flowdesk.
Yes, say goodbye to complicated email marketing platforms. Flowdesk is the ultimate productivity tool that simplifies everything, making your life just a lot easier.
Yeah. We used to rely on MailChimp. You've probably heard of all the email platforms, MailChimp, Constant Contact, HubSpot has one. And look, if you're using those, that's fine. Do whatever you want to do. But if you want to up your game and guess what? Save some money. The aesthetics with Flowdesk alone are going to sell you if you just go in and try it out.
Eye-catching layouts and all kinds of beautiful creations come with Flowdesk.
Just as a business owner, you really do need to be communicating with your audience via newsletter. So if you aren't doing that, you could go ahead and just start with Flowdesk. I tell people all the time that when you are only depending on your audience community being social media, you're really setting yourself up as a disservice, because you don't have those people's emails. If something happens with Meta today, all the people that follow you or you connect with on social media platforms are gone. So you really do need to be building a community via email so that you can communicate with them that way if you have a product or service.
We've secured a special 50% off link for you to try out Flowdesk. Experience its incredible features and see the difference for yourself. Once you fall in love with it, which we know you will, you'll also save money on your subscription.
That's right. Don't miss out on that offer. You can go to arnerventures.com/Flowdesk and give it a try.
So for me, I've been on a journey, just to give an example, this year, really to kind of get rid of phone addiction and
Yeah.
deal with like the way that I use social media and how much I'm on there. And it's been such a thing because I use it for work, right? Social
Mm-hmm.
media is part of my work, but
Mm-hmm.
what matters most to me in this season, I'm home with my girls, I'm homeschooling my oldest, and what matters most to me is that I'm present with them. So I'm just trying to find a way to figure out what that looks like, and that is minimalism for me. That is using minimalism to really chip away at the distractions that are taking away from what matters. And luckily, once we started homeschooling, I didn't really have the space. I like forget about my phone most of the day at this point anyway.
So
So I'm
work
like,
itself
well, I
out.
tried so hard the rest of the year, and now I don't even have to try because I just don't even have time for it.
Right. That's interesting. I've never heard anybody say that minimalism is a tool, and you're so right. You're so right. It can easily be considered that way instead of I'm a minimalist, and then you've got the sort of this persona of what people expect of you or what you're supposed to expect of yourself. But if you look at it as a tool, that's a really great way of looking at it. I think
Yeah.
people get really intimidated by the word minimalist or minimalism. So that doesn't make it so intimidating.
I think that, if you go into it thinking, I want to be a minimalist, and this is what I did, like this, I want this to be my lifestyle. I quickly learned that parts of it weren't going to work for me in that season when I was first going into it. And parts of it defined by who, really. It's just like
Mhm.
there might be a dictionary definition of it. And then there is, how one person who's sharing about it is living and what the other person is sharing of their home. And it's just, there might be common principles amongst most people who practice minimalism, but when it comes down to it, when I was going into it with the mindset of like, I am trying to become a minimalist, it just didn't work for me. It just felt frustrating.
Mm.
And when I more so started to think about it as, okay, how is this going to work for me? And how is this going to make a difference in my life if I just kind of use it as a tool and come back to the I have like 4 pillars that I like to think of when I talk about minimalish living, because that's why my
Uh-huh.
podcast is called Minimalish. Um, and the first is living with less stuff. The second is defining your values and kind of crafting or changing your days to fit those values the
Mhm.
best that you can, in that season of life.
Mhm.
Pillar 3 is to declutter your mind. So there's that aspect of it too, which
Uh-huh.
is probably the aspect that we'll talk about when we talk about like mornings and
Mhm.
reflection. And then the fourth pillar is to walk towards contentment. So I kind
Hmm.
of come back to, okay, these 4 pillars, looking at what would these 4 pillars look like in this season? And if I'm feeling a bit cluttery in my home or my life, I go back to those 4 pillars and kind of use it as
Mm.
a tool to declutter whatever needs decluttering.
Well, I love when you said walking towards contentment because that also sets it up where there's not some end goal that's supposed to be perfect, that it's,
Right.
just be content. And sometimes that's so underrated is just content. It's like the whole thing of everybody's trying to be happy. Like, what is happiness? It's like sometimes contentment is really the goal. So I love that you end with that. Like that's the fourth one. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that you have the sort of this journey about how you moved states, no job, you downsized, all that's so relatable to us because we did the same thing. But I would love to know about that decision-making process and how you decided you were going to go ahead and jump because, the rest of the world, not everybody, but a lot of the world, I think sees folks who make decisions like that. I'm speaking from experience as that's quote unquote crazy or, it's definitely the path less traveled. So what led to that and sort of what was going on with making you guys decide that you were just going to do it?
Yeah. So we had the reason we wanted to move was that when we first got married, we moved away from family. We are both from the same area in Pittsburgh. Not the same exact area, but like Pittsburgh in general.
Mm-hmm.
So our families are around the same areas, and we moved away because we wanted to find teaching jobs. And at the time, it was really hard to find teaching jobs in Western PA. So we moved, and we found our teaching jobs in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is a really nice area to live. It's beautiful, but we are, especially me, I'm very close to my family. And that was really hard for me. I grew up in a small town surrounded by my family. And, a lot of people look at that as like, oh, you get away from all of that, get out of the small town that you're from. But for me, it's like I wanted to not necessarily have to be back in the same small town, but rather just family is such a value for me. So, I really value that time that we were away. And I think it was really good for us in early marriage. And it's great to see and live other places. But every summer, we would interview back in schools in Pittsburgh. And every summer, we would think, okay, maybe this is the summer we're going back. And when we didn't get the jobs, we just stayed put and we continued on the journey. And the difference this time, which it was the summer after we discovered minimalism, the difference this time was we realized, well, one, we had a kid. So I think we had a little bit more motivation to get back towards family for that reason. Yeah. Traveling to visit family with a baby is not as fun. But the other reason is, once minimalism came into our lives, we realized we don't, like, our trajectory of success does not need to be like acquiring the bigger house or the nicer cars. I think I said that earlier. And we kind of redefined what success looked like to us. And for us, success was living the life that was focused on our values, and family was a value for us. So we kind of looked at it and looked at, like, can we survive if we make this jump? Like, most people, they might want something, and I don't want to say most people, but people who don't go after that thing that they want, there could be several reasons, and many of those might be true obstacles, but some of them might just be kind of this mindset hurdle of, I need everything to line up for me to be able to jump, right? So I think that's what we had thought in the past. And what we realized this time was we more so looked at it as, if we do this, if we jump, can we make it work? Even if it doesn't work out in like the perfect way that we would like it to, my husband gets a teaching job at a really good school, and I am able to do some work from home things and then stay home. That's what we wanted. But even if that doesn't work out that way, will we be able to make it work?
It's a cozy season, and a good night's sleep is always essential.
Oh gosh, we always talk about when the change of the season happens, you really have to make sure that you're getting some good sleep. If you don't get good sleep, and then the days are shorter and it can be kind of gloomy, you're just setting yourself up for a really bad day, right?
You are. So transform your bed into a safe and refreshing haven.
With Cozy Earth bamboo sheets. We love our Cozy Earth sheets. I mean, we love them all times of year, not just during the cozy season. It's just a sustainable and eco-friendly bedding. We just love it.
And there's no going back to your old sheets once you've used Cozy Earth. There's no going back to cotton or denim or whatever your old sheets were made of.
That's right. And who also loves Cozy Earth?
Well, I think many of our listeners might be able to guess.
Lady O. Oprah. When Oprah says that something is a good product, we really just should have stopped it. We should have just stopped, and we should have just said, Oprah loves Cozy Earth. And that's it.
You get Cozy Earth sheets. You get Cozy Earth sheets.
Yep. Well, I tell you what, you get 40% off of your Cozy Earth purchase when you go to arneradventures.com/Cozy Earth, and you can use our link and our code to save. It's the biggest discount you're ever going to get on Cozy Earth. We promise.
I would think so. It's unbeatable. 40%. Cozy Earth's own sales can't compare to these savings.
They definitely can.
Yeah.
So head on over there and have a better night's sleep this fall.
And we decided that we were just going to make it work because we wanted to be back. So we actually moved in with family first, mostly because we couldn't find a house right away that we wanted. So we just moved in maybe for a month or so as we house hunted. And then my husband ended up getting a really great job, but it didn't happen until after we made the leap.
The leap. Oh gosh, that's exciting and also so scary.
Yeah.
But it all worked out, so that's good.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, and it's like with anything, I think you sometimes you have to take the leap, or sometimes I think when you feel like everything has to line up, you're almost not even like maybe subconsciously working against the goal happening because you're not investing to move forward in any way. So yeah, it sounds like you two really invested and then move forward, and that's really great.
Yeah.
So I am so excited to get into the morning routine. So the whole idea of carving out time in the morning and making it like in our world, it really just sets us up for the tone of the day, everything, the way how everything works out. So I know that you came up with the simple morning list, which we'll talk about in a second, but how were you someone that once you sort of adopted sort of a minimalist lifestyle, did that come into play, or had you all along had sort of a value of mornings? Like how did all of that come into play of you purposely reflecting on how mornings are so important?
Yeah. So it was not always a thing for me. I think there were seasons where I would try to get myself to wake up earlier and, have more time in the mornings to reflect. But my husband had started a morning routine and he used, I think it was like the 5-minute journal for years. So that was kind of inspiring to just watch him. But it never really was something that I was able to do. I slept past my alarms and everything like that. So, whenever when we moved back, I was doing work from home to kind of make things work financially for us. And one of the things I did was I was tutoring early in the morning. I was teaching English to Chinese students virtually. And so because I had to be on the other side of the world in the mornings, I was waking up at like 4 a.m. and doing that. And then I would go from that straight to my daughter waking up, as she was like 1 year old at the time. And I had the life that I wanted. Like we defined our values, we went after it. I had the life that I wanted, but I realized there was no real time for myself. And I was not really the person that I wanted to be in that season. I was stressed out. I was not finding time to grow and reflect at all. Not any time to read, like all these things, any time for movement or working out, like all these things I wanted to do. I couldn't really find where they fit. So I was already waking up really early just by default for the job. And I started carving out a short period of time, either before my classes, depending on how early they started, or like I would stop teaching in enough time to where I know for sure this is the time my daughter will at least be most likely getting up by. And I would carve out maybe 30 minutes of that time. But most of the time I was waking up earlier than those classes, which was really early. So it was hard, but I was already waking up earlier than I ever had in my life to start this. And the one book that I read that really got me started was Hal Elrod's The Miracle Morning. And I started by doing his Miracle Morning, which I cannot remember off by heart, but it did involve reading a little bit of like personal development, some kind of like either prayer or meditation, whatever works for you and your beliefs, and then movement in some way, just like even 10 minutes of it. And I know I'm probably butchering it because there are other things, but I eventually stopped the Miracle Morning and started kind of adapting it for myself. But that just having some type of system of what I would do in the mornings helped me start to do that. And it did involve like, the just having time for myself with the movement and the reading at first. And then I started reflecting in the mornings as well. And it started with some of the lists that are in Simple Morning Lists, and it evolved from there.
Okay. So that sort of helped spawn you developing simple morning lists.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So simple morning list provides a structure for people to go ahead and engage in an intentional morning routine of because sometimes people just get overwhelmed with, well, what am I supposed to do? Okay, I'll get up early. What am I supposed to do? And so can you share how the journal, of course, has influenced your days? It sounds like we kind of know that, but how, when you developed it, how did you figure, okay, let me develop this so that it is helping other people with their morning routines?
Yeah. So whenever I started making these like lists in the morning and reflecting via these lists, I felt like just like the Miracle Morning had kind of influenced me to start, um, I wanted to share what these lists were, and I wanted to provide a structure for people to be able to journal through them. Especially
Mhm.
I'm a huge writer. I love writing and I process my thoughts through writing, but I used to be an English teacher, and I know that journaling and writing intimidates people who aren't naturally lovers of writing. And
Mhm,
so
mhm,
because I was making like these lists in the morning, and as I was journaling, some mornings I would, journal way more than just lists. And other mornings it was just, okay, these simple bulleted lists is helping me reflect for my mornings. And so I knew I wanted to create this structure because it's like the least intimidating journal ever because it's just like you could just make a list. You don't even have to write full sentences, and
yeah,
it's more so, with journaling, it's more so the process. It's not about what you write, and it's not about, nobody's going to read it unless you share it with them. It's
mhm,
more so about um the reflecting and the thought that goes behind it. So while you could write maybe, the gratitude portion of Simple Morning List, you could write down one word or a phrase. You are going through this thought process. You are remembering something that is important and valuable to you and that you're grateful for. And that is the process that's important and
mm,
that makes a difference for your day. So um, that is kind of why I wanted to make this into a journal because I thought it was a very unintimidating way for people to start journaling in the mornings.
yeah. Do you find that people, and it's sort of, I guess, kind of gets into my next question about when you hear people say things to you, which I'm sure you hear, oh, but I have this going on. And it sounds like you had them going on too, but, oh, I've got to get up with the kids, or I've got to get up, with the dog. And when I wake up, he immediately wants to go out, or whatever it is. It's so hard to have long days. How do you encourage people, knowing how important mornings are? How do you encourage people to stay the path and to instill in them how important mornings are to go ahead and start the simple morning list?
Yeah. So I do think, everyone's life is different. And
Mhm.
I have been through since I created Simple Morning List, which I think was in 2019. So it's been a while. I have since been pregnant and I have a toddler again. And so throughout the seasons, my mornings have looked really different too. But the one thing that has stayed consistent, and I'm not saying that it's been like every single morning, I am
Yeah.
perfectly sitting and reflecting each morning, no matter what. But the one thing that's stayed consistent is going back to this habit. And that this habit helps me have a better day with all the things around that are going on around me. And it helps me carve out a little bit of time for myself, but also focus on what like remind myself of what matters so that I'm not just getting woken up by my child and stumbling into the day and feeling, having all these demands of what come to us during the day, whether you have kids or not. Like there, when we wake up, a lot of times there's just demand after demand of our
Yeah.
job or whatever
Mhm.
else. We're serving others in some way. Um, or have some type of responsibilities to get to. So I think the main thing is the most important thing about mornings, I say, is to set up your day intentionally and to remind yourself like who you want to be in this day,
Mm.
what's your path, like what are you working towards, what are you grateful for, so that we can work towards that contentment aspect as well, and happiness and joy in our day,
Mhm.
and what really matters most. And the lists that I have in Simple Morning Lists help work towards those things. And so it doesn't have to be an hour in the morning to get to that. It doesn't have to be even a half hour. Like you can do Simple Morning Lists as even if you have 10 minutes, as much as you can to just pause and think through these things. And I know some people's kids wake up at, I don't know, 4:30, 5 in the morning or whatever else. Like I had the teaching starting at 4 in the morning. I know that. And it really doesn't have to be done by yourself even. There are some mornings still, and through being pregnant and having another child, like it really challenged my mornings because I was so tired.
I'm sure.
And this morning, actually, it's funny because this morning I slept through all of my alarms. I've stayed up late way too many days in a row, and I've woken up early every single one of those days. And today my body was like, nope, I somehow slept 10 hours last night, which never happens.
Wow. That's
my
great.
body just like
That's great,
forced me into that.
Yeah.
I needed it.
Yeah.
And so I did not get like my alone time in the morning. But as I am, I will get my kids breakfast or whichever one of them are up. I just like get them happy and what they need. And then I open my journal next to them and I do as much as I can. If I get halfway through it only, that's that for the day. But that's one of the reasons, like, it's undated. It's just, 3 months worth of pages. You just pick up where you left off. So
do you still use your own simple morning list?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know that it's sort of there's different types in there, the surrender list, affirmations. Did you develop this for them all to cohesively work together? Or is it like, or what do you think, did you make it for different people, or what was sort of the thought process behind that?
Yeah. So the subtitle, I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up, but it's a daily practice of letting go, getting grateful, and reminding yourself of where you're headed. So they do work together. The first list is the one that I think throws people off the most. It's called the surrender list. And it's really just like letting go of things that maybe are getting in your way in some way. Like I said earlier, when I was working towards the goal of being on my phone less, one of the surrender things for me was like being present on Instagram, because I felt like I had to do that as someone who works online and is communicating with people who listen to my podcast through social media. I would just put that on my surrender list because I needed to let that go. That was not going to be an expectation for me anymore, that I was going to be present there, because I need to be present other places. So that's just like one of the examples. A lot of times I would let go of like a fear or anxiety of something in some way on that list. So it's really just, what do you need to let go of? So it starts with letting go of things that are getting in your way, and then getting grateful again, focusing on what is already good in front of you, and then moving towards your purpose statement and what's the most important thing to focus on in this day. So looking at where you're headed and where you want to be going.
Gosh, it's so motivating. It's so great. I love it. I'm so excited that we get to present this to our audience too. And we're gonna definitely link it down in the show notes and all that. I want to get to your fast 5 questions.
Yeah.
So these are just this or that. It's just a way to get to know you a little bit better. So the first one is digital calendar or paper calendar?
Oh, I'm a digital calendar at the moment.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Only because it gives me reminders, and I need those reminders.
Right. I'm the same way. I love writing. I love writing it down, but I don't know. I just found like in this season of my life, I need the reminders because I'm going to forget. It's like I have too much going on, and what if I don't go look at my calendar? So yeah, I need the digital reminders for sure. Okay, number 2, sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Oh,
even though we're talking about mornings.
I know. I thought you were going to say sunrise. Okay.
It's funny. I do mornings from like my basement little cubbies. I don't really see the sunrise.
Okay. Number 3, ebooks or a paperback book?
Ebooks right now. These are like some seasons,
They're
these
very
questions.
seasonal, seasonal. Sometimes I really like going to the library and like having an actual book, and like that smell of a book. I don't know why, but then sometimes I'm like, I just want it, digitally. And it is interesting because I go back and forth too. Okay. Number 4, nature walk or city stroll?
Nature walk.
Okay. And number 5, we asked this of most people. Jerry thinks it's a super interesting way to get to know people, is ketchup or mustard?
Ketchup.
Okay. That's probably spot on for Pennsylvania, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, especially Heinz,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay. And the question that we do ask everyone, and we think it's super important, is Desirae, what does a life well lived mean to you?
So kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, a life well lived for me is a life where I am coming back to my values and regularly and making sure that my days are aligned to them as much as possible. So I have, because of that being kind of my definition of success, my life has looked so different over the past 5 years. I went back to teaching for a little bit. I left teaching again. Like I take a lot of risks in my career, and we've taken a lot of jumps and leaps of faith even since the one that we talked about in this episode. But that is because we continually come back to our values and kind of align our lives to them as much as possible.
I love that. I love that so much. I would love it if you could tell our audience where they can find you, where they can find Simple Morning Lists and your podcast and just everything that you have to offer. And we're going to make sure we link it down in the show notes.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. Like I said, I'm not super present there right now. It just doesn't, but I am more than any other social media platform. I'm there at Desirae.Endres. And then my podcast is where I am consistently the most. That's where I put the most time into my content. And that is just minimal-ish. You have to have the dash there to find it easily. Sometimes I'm like, why did I put that there? It makes it harder to find. And then Simple Morning List you can find on Amazon and also at simplemorninglist.com. But I have to fix the link there because if you go to simplemorninglist.com, you can only find the US version of it, but you can get it wherever you're at. So
okay.
I don't know. Just search it on Amazon. That's the best option if you're not in the US. Yeah.
Okay. We'll link all of that. Well, gosh, thank you so much for being here. I know a lot of people listen to podcasts in the morning on their commutes or whatever. So hopefully they're listening to this and going, oh my gosh, I need to carve out more time in my mornings and make sure that I utilize Desiree's Simple Morning List to live more intentionally. And that's all we can hope for. So we're really appreciative of your time today because we know how valuable it is.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been fun.
If this episode resonated with you, or if you know of someone who would benefit from anything we talked about today, or any episode, our guests, or anything, please share it with a friend. It's a great way of supporting the podcast and us, and we really appreciate it.
Another way of supporting the pod is by leaving us a 5-star review rating on the platform you're listening to us on. Oh, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button because that also supports us. We would love that.
You can always find us, links we refer to during the show, and any of the podcast sponsors at arnerdventures.com or linked here in these show notes. And until next time, enjoy that journey you're on. We're wishing you lots of adventures.
Adios.
Arrivederci.
Au revoir.
Adios.
Sayonara.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Dos videniana.
And a yeon.
Bye.